Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Ellensburg, Washington, USA on a winter Saturday morning. I'm so glad you could join us. I hope you enjoyed today's program. The local time is 8:49, and we will begin our session on the Chugach Terrain and its translation, at the top of the hour. I don't know, about 10 minutes from now. So you know the drill. If you're watching this after the fact, you can, you're in control right now. You can fast forward 10 minutes, and that will be the official start of the session. The lecture, I guess we would call it. But hopefully these feel different than just simple lectures. They're conversations, and they're chances for us to go back and forth together as we learn new things together. So, I see out of the corner of my eye we've got a live chat that's working. Are we functional? Can I say hi to a few folks before I remember to invite our guest by email? Are we 5 by 5? Jack says 5 by 5 from Santa Monica, California. Come on now, Jack. That sounds pretty damn good to me. We had 18 inches of snow since I saw you last. 18 inches of snow in Ellensburg, not up in the mountains. We can talk more about that in a bit, but Santa Monica sounds pretty nice to me right now. Jason from Wenatchee, Washington, the drone guy, MotoJW. Good morning, Jason. I'm glad you're with us this morning. MotoJW on Instagram. Beautiful drone photography, and he continues to be outstanding in everything that he does. Cecilia from Harnett, Kansas. Phil gives us a 5 by 5 report, 2 different Phils. Siletzia Slim says it's 30 degrees centigrade in Costa Rica. Jealous. I haven't seen the sun in about a week and a half, feels like. I'm going to scroll back. That went too fast. I want to say hi to a few more folks. You know what? No, I'm going to email the guest before I forget about it. I almost forgot last time. Give me a second, would you please? I'm glad that we are functional. Turn the volume off that, boy. I'm sure there's a better way to do this, but this is the only way I know how to do it. Checking my email. Oh, Nick Zentner just went live. So I get a little email notification. I don't know if you do. It's got a little red dot on it. It's kind of handy. Okay, now I'm scrolling back and I want to say hi to a bunch more folks here. We may have more distant viewers than typical because of the time. Mike's in Red Deer, Alberta, Canada. Douglas is in Kansas City. Ken, Nashville, Tennessee. Bruce, Thunder Bay, Ontario. Catherine, at Auburn, California. Edwin from Missouri City, Texas. Kathy's in Brisbane, Australia. Have a good one. Zazu is in Brussels, Belgium. Hello. Ed's in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Yeah, we do have distant folks. Andre from Germany. Rick from New Hampshire. Dennis from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Bob from Woodinville. Bob and Kathy from Woodinville, Washington. Herschel from Kentucky, USA. 15 degrees there. I guess we got you beat. What is it? It's 23 degrees here. It's not a contest. Yeah, so at least our bitter cold temperatures are a thing of the past, at least for now. But well, I had to dig out the vehicle yesterday. That was a full-time job to drive in here this morning. Ken from Charlottetown, PEI. Prince Edward Island, is that what that is, Ken? Hey, that's cool. Prince Edward Island, great to have you with us. Pamela from Kamloops. Yeah, we're going to Alaska. We're talking about BC today, British Columbia, in other words. Bond Blue says, good morning, Nick, 5 by 5. Thanks for the report. I'm not understanding some of these. George says he's near the OP of the Niagara. I don't know what that means, George, but I'm glad you're with us. Adele, Disco Park. Always a thrill to see you here, Adele. Clint, Coast to Coast. Ditto, man. The yellow books are flying off the shelves, and these students don't have to pay a dime because of your generosity. Thank you, Clint, Coast to Coast. Sven from Hamelin, Germany. Don, Los Angeles, he's a regular. Vinman's Bakery, we're getting dug out in Ellensburg. Yeah, I noticed, Jeff, you guys, that Thursday morning when I had to, not even the sidewalks were shoveled, walking into school. Vinman's was open. Your son Sam and Nick, it was so cool to see you guys open in the middle of all that. Yeah, so as soon as I was signing off on Wednesday, the last show, I could see it was starting to snow, and that snow didn't quit for, 24 hours or something like that. 18 inches, and that's rare for us here in town. We usually get a little bit of snow here and there, but to get 18 inches all at once was a challenge. So their CWU canceled all classes, both Thursday and Friday, but I knew that some of my students were in the dorms here, so I held class. I emailed everybody. I said, I'm no hero, but I said, look, you guys are like 3 buildings away. You can walk through the snow to get to the building. I'll prop one of the doors open. You can get in, and we'll do it. 5 students showed up, but we did the lectures. Geology 101 I'm talking about. But yeah, Jeff and Vinman's and Campus Utotem and a few other favorite restaurants have been open through all of this. Ricky Z-Man in Battle Creek, Michigan. Our guest is here. That's good. He's in the green room. Wonderful. Good to see you. Glad that worked. Ian in Melbourne, Australia. Maybe I even pronounced that right. Michael, we're going to talk about your neighborhood today up there in Vancouver, BC. Gillian's in Pasco, Washington. Greg, Honey Greg in Tennessee. Antioch, California. I'm still back a ways. I don't know, I'll come down to live here. Unity, Wisconsin, Lake Ontario. Jack McKay, HML from Northern Ellensburg. Jack, do we know each other? Come on in and visit if you want. Greg from Mackay, Queensland via quarantine in Finland. Oh my Lord, okay, well hang in there, Greg. South Wales, hello Mark. Den is in Dorset, UK. Dennis is in Ottawa, Canada. Regine in France. Doug and Kathy from Tagish, Yukon Territory, where it's minus 43 C. That's outrageous. What is that? What is that Fahrenheit? Minus 43 C. Holy cow. All right, I'm done complaining. If I was complaining, I'm going to stop complaining right there. Backcountry Gary's with us. Maybe he's still at Mount Baker. Who knows? Yeah, all the freeways are closed in and out of this valley. So, there's been no truck traffic or any kind of back and forth. The snow a few days ago, and then we had a big blast of warmer air come through, so there was bunch of tree limbs falling and landslides and avalanches and all sorts of things. So it's been interesting for sure. And a thanks, here's a toast to all the hardworking crews who are out there plowing and digging and neighbors helping each other. It can be a real positive kind of pure experience, where you help each other dig out, and I don't know. I like that. Feels old-fashioned somehow. If you can avoid politics, it feels good. Okay, we got 2 minutes. I got the iPad plugged in just for the beginning. Let me make sure we're functional there. We are. And I guess I will, let's do it now. I don't think I'll show this again today, but just if you haven't checked in with this yet since the new year, you missed I think a good show on Wednesday. We'll talk about it. Show M with Jeff Tepper, and here we are today on Saturday morning, January 8th, and you can see our schedule, and we will continue to the end of the alphabet here in February. So I've got plans. I'll give you a little sense of the plans coming in a bit. Okay, one last check to make sure we're doing okay. We've got how many? 600 joining us by now. A few more will be filtering in. It seems like what's our norm these days? About 800, maybe 900 watching live at the kind of peak time, and then people kind of trail away at some point. You know, if we were only getting 200 people watching, I would rethink what we're doing here, but I like this format a lot this winter, and seems like many of you are as well. You keep coming back. Okay, headphones are there, all sorts of pieces of paper I'm going to hold up to the camera. Don't tell Nat. Deborah's headphones aren't working, everybody. What are we going to do? Deborah, I hope you got a plan B. Line in the sand says, good evening from Namibia. Hello, Namibia from the U.S. That's a thrill. We're going to start in 1 minute. Thank you. Hot mic. Microphone is hot. It's a hot mic. Come on now. Mike Eddy. That's a hot mic. Yeah, Alaska, Chugach, Triple Junction, Migration, California Triad. You're going to use that map. You're going to use that prop, boy. You're going to use that prop. You're going to use that map. You can do it. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to a wintry Ellensburg, Washington on a Saturday morning. There's nobody around. The snow's piled high and deep, as is much around here these days, and I'm the only guy in the building. And it's wonderful to be with you on this Saturday morning. We've fallen into a routine with these shows. I don't know if you've noticed that I talk for about a half an hour, and that's really my goal. Instead of going for an hour, which I think I was doing back in November, we got a guest in the green room waiting. He or she's the expert, so what am I doing talking for an hour? So I've tried to pare that down and get down to about a half an hour, give or take. And that is the plan again this morning. We are going to Alaska, believe it or not, today. And before you think we've gone off the rails, because you're like, wait a minute now, I thought everything was supposed to be tied to the North Cascades in Washington. Are you really serious about going to Alaska? I am. Because there's an Eocene story with rocks here in the Pacific Northwest and some very similar rocks up in southeast Alaska. And it ties into the near trench magma stuff that we were doing with Jeff Tepper last time. So I assume you saw that show. And so my job is to try to take some things that we were working on with Tepper last time and kind of accentuate that a little bit. In other words, find some themes and expand on it just a bit. And then also just kind of get us thinking about parts of this story, and then the guest will come in at the bottom of the hour and put those pieces of the story together for us. That's the general plan. So we've got some geography to learn. We've got some basic Geology 101 stuff to learn or review. And then we also have these near trench magmas and a few concepts from the last show that we are going to recycle here today. That's the plan. Are you up for it? Now, before I begin, I want to say first one major message, and that is, you know, if you've been with us a while, that I avoid talking about ocean plates. I have avoided it. I've avoided which ocean plate is offshore at what time. Or like last show, which spreading ridge was oriented which direction, and creating which names of which plates and what directions were they going. And the reason for that is that here in 2022, there is still pretty significant disagreement among geologists. And on the one hand, that's exciting and that's healthy and that's what science is supposed to be. You're supposed to be skeptical. You're supposed to be true to your evidence. So that's all fine. It's all fine that there's conflict. There's conflicting ideas. There's conflicting messages. But you know, my role is I try to find themes. I try to find narratives. I try to take this and that and put it together. And if there's such kind of wild across-the-board ideas about which ocean plates were where at what time, it's challenging to put a narrative together. So what's my first message this morning? I think my first message is not only today, but the next couple of shows, we're not going to have everything kind of wrap up in this nice, tidy little bow. Are you ready for that? Are you okay with that? Are you happy to sign off on the idea that you're going to invest some time learning some new things, but it's going to be not really competitive ideas or conflicting ideas, but not everybody is seeing it the same way. And I want you to be okay with that. Okay? All right. So, how can I start bringing some things on a silver platter for all of us, including the guest? Okay, well, we're going to go back to remembering, back before the holiday time, we had two significant accretion events that we've been focusing on. We haven't looked at this one in a while. Wrangellia, you remember, that came in 100 million years ago. We dock Wrangellia. That's the thing that came from the equator at some point. That's the thing that had the Carmoutzen basalt. You want to see this? Yeah, I'm reverting to my old ways of holding stuff up to the camera, but there's a reason for wanting to do this. So yeah, we accreted Wrangellia. You remember talking to Basil Tikoff, that Wrangellia was docked at south of Washington, for sure. Everybody agrees. Wrangellia and friends, otherwise known as the Insular Superterrane, docked south of Washington. Now, how far south is next winter? But we dock Wrangellia, and the large igneous province, or in other words, the flood basalt portion of Wrangellia, half of it is on Vancouver Island, a little bit in Hattagwai, and then a bunch up here in Alaska. Okay? Dock Wrangellia, slice it, and the docking is 100 million years ago. Today's story is going to happen after Wrangellia docks. Okay? Because we're talking about the Eocene today, so of course it's going to be younger than this Cretaceous story. All right. But our story today is happening right before we dock Siletzia, which was 50 million years ago. And if you look carefully, there's Vancouver Island, and there's Wrangellia, again, part of this huge thing that collided with North America 100 million years ago and then got sent. Now it's north of Washington. Wrangellia docked south of Washington, but now it's all north of Washington. That's translation. If you're confused by the title today, translation is taking something that was added to the edge of North America and then translating it, shifting it north. That's what translation means. And yeah, we're going to be taking stuff in Alaska, the Chugach Terrain. We're going to dock it, but we're going to talk about a hypothesis that there was significant translation north of that Chugach Terrain. So again, I'm just trying to lay out these places and names and concepts, and then our guest, I know, has a few PowerPoint slides where things will be laid out in a little bit more organized manner. So this little green thing up here is important for us today. And the green thing is some schist, metamorphic rock called schist, called the Leech River Schist. And it's a little kind of isolated little green slice that's sandwiched between Wrangellia, the thing that docked 100, and Siletzia, the thing that docked 50. And focusing on that Leech River Schist is going to be a fundamental part of today's meeting. Now, you know what a schist looks like, maybe? Here's a schist. It's got some foliations to it. It's a metamorphic rock. Oh, is this lighting and turning out okay? There, that's pretty good. You can even maybe see some garnets in this thing. So this is the Chugach schist, north of Mount Stewart, but this is not, in other words, this is technically not the schist we're talking about today, but the Leech River Schist has some similarities to this. So I want you to have a visual for a schist. And in fact, this is a garnet schist, and garnets will play a role in our discussion today. Here's another piece of Chugach schist from central Washington that was rolled around in a stream. And yeah, there's garnets in this one too. It's kind of fun. And if you're a longtime viewer, you know I have this one. Hard to get sexier than this. I don't remember where this thing came from. Oh, I wasn't even given to me. This is part of the department's collection. I should look this up. I forgot this thing had a number. But my point is, we are talking about schists today. And there's not only schist of a particular age and a particular chemistry on the south tip of Vancouver Island, there's an identical schist, the same look, the same age, the same weird minerals like garnet and kyanite near Sitka, Alaska. Matching schists. I need to enunciate here. South tip of Vancouver Island, BC, south tip of Baranof Island, Alaska. What's the story? Our guest is going to help us. Now, we can go to the iPad. Daddy's spitballing like crazy here. And I remind you that you can go to my personal shrine at, in other words, nickzentner.com. This is what it looks like. I don't know if you've ever clicked on some of these, but, you know, all of our shows are here. Videos from last spring, all those classroom sessions, backyard sessions, PBS stuff, whatever. I'm deeply in love with myself, obviously. But you please remember that in the upper right-hand corner, there is something to click on, the Crazy Eocene. It's been a while since I've done this, so in case you're new to the series, so I've got all sorts of scientific papers carefully selected for you, kind of in the order that we've gone through the alphabet. And today, gee, I wonder who our guest is. Today, we've got two papers by Darrel Cowan. A paper that he wrote, what is that, 40 years ago? Yeah, 40 years ago, on these matching schists. And then he updated the hypothesis. And so I encourage you at some point to go back and forth between the 1982 and the 2003 paper on this story. And I'm not going to steal our guest's thunder, but it is Darrel Cowan. Come on now. And Darrel's going to be doing much more with these images. But you have them, is my point. You have them to look at your own convenience. Okay, come on, boy. I don't know. I feel like playing here for just a second, even though I said I wasn't going to burn up too much time. Here's Google Earth, so you can see where I'm located. Google knows where I am. What if we go, let's go to Baranof Island. Well, that was fun. What if we hit 3D? So I don't know the specific outcrops. I've never been to this island. Have you? It's not easy to get to, I'm guessing. But our Baranof Island schist is going to be up here on this island. I was playing around this morning at breakfast, more recent searches. We're also going in a second to Chugach Island, which is way up here. Let me slow this down. Let's get rid of this. So Chugach Island. Oh shit, hang on. There's a bunch of specific locations. Let me get you oriented again. Sorry for being so squirrely. So yes, we're up in Alaska, but I want to specifically help you see that we're going to be talking about a series of places. Look at this beautiful trench, by the way. Chugach Island, Kodiak Island, you've heard of that. Resurrection Bay, down to Baranof Island. Yeah, we're going that far afield with our discussion today. And then we're also going to be zeroing in on this portion of Vancouver Island, where we can be screwing around along the Leech River and to some near trench magmas nearby. Last time when we were together, we were down here in Western Washington talking about potential near trench magmas with Jeff Tepper. Okay, I think I'm done using the iPad right off the bat, he asks himself. Yep, I am done. So I'm getting rid of that. Powering the laptop back up. Don't have a frozen phone. Good. Okay, so let's pick up the pace, boy. Triple junction migration, California Triad, Chugach combo platter. Let's do each of these quickly. It's already 9:15. I gotta move. So with our discussion with Jeff Tepper, do you remember this from the last show? We were trying to decide where we had some classic near trench magmas, and why did we care about that? The near trench magmas were important to us because they were evidence, one piece of evidence, for a subducting spreading ridge. Do you recall? So there were a series of near trench magmas up on Vancouver Island which are important. The Clayoquot, the Flores, the Walker Island, I think it is. So these red dots are near trench magmas that are roughly 51 million years ago, which is good evidence that there was a spreading ridge subducting or disappearing beneath the western margin of North America 51 million years ago at this location. Remember, I was pushing Jeff a little bit because he wanted to back away from some of those Eocene magmas in the Forearc. He didn't want to say they were near trench magmas. He thought they were part of a different story, which is fine. We're going to have Jeff back. But he did like two locations from the last show that from his work was pretty classic near trench magmas. Chimacum Rock near Port Townsend, Washington, dated at 47 million years old. And a surprise to me, the Grays River volcanics. I guess I didn't realize that those Grays River volcanics, which are all the way down here, just across the river from Astoria, Oregon, essentially. We're at the mouth of the Columbia River. And according to Jeff Tepper, those Grays River volcanics, dated between 42 and 37 million years ago, are good near trench magmas which indicate a subducting spreading ridge. Okay, so what's a triple junction? Because there maybe was a moment in the Tepper show where you're like, I'm losing it a little bit. They're talking about resurrection, what? And rollback, I don't know what that is, and triple junction. Yeah, I think maybe it did get away from us just a little bit. It was fun, but if you didn't have the background, I don't think it worked. I'm here to reassure you that those concepts will make sense to you over the next couple of weeks, but please be patient. Let me help right now. What is a triple junction? It's just like it sounds. A triple junction is a place you can put your finger on the map where three tectonic plates are touching each other. Triple junction. And a classic way to get a triple junction is to have a subducting spreading ridge. So, does this look familiar from last time? with Tepper. I redrew it, but this is the basic idea. Let's not even care about what specific time we're talking about. It's in the Eocene sometime. Most everybody agrees there was a spreading ridge subducting beneath the Pacific Northwest roughly 50 million years ago. Nobody's getting away from that. And so here's our spreading ridge, which is a divergent plate boundary. And so this is an ocean plate going this way and an ocean plate going this way. And here's the North American plate coming this way. So where's the triple junction? Put my finger on it right here. Triple junction. 1, 2, 3 tectonic plates touching. Okay, we're good there. That's one example of a triple junction. Today there's a triple junction at Cape Mendocino in the Northern California coast, where the Juan de Fuca plate, the Pacific plate, and the North American plate are all touching. And that's a very active earthquake area because it's a triple junction. Okay, well, what was on the outline today? Triple junction migration. Migration, what do you mean? Here's what I mean. Let's go back. So if we have different near-trench magmas, in other words, if we have near-trench magmas of different ages, like we do on this map, the near-trench magmas are here, 51. The near-trench magmas form at Chimacum Rock 47 million years ago. The near-trench magmas down here at the Grays River volcanic field between 42 and 37 million years ago. So this is easy, isn't it? I don't think it is easy. But your first thought is probably, let's have my arm be the spreading ridge. Can you even see this? So if near-trench magmas are a good piece of evidence for a subducting spreading ridge, and they are, then let's have my arm be the spreading ridge, a northeast trending spreading ridge. And according to this age pattern in Washington and southern British Columbia, can we say that there was a southward drifting triple junction, or a migration of the triple junction? The triple junction was here, 51. It was here, 47. Should have done my squats this morning. And between 42 and 37, the triple junction's down here. In other words, the spreading ridge is migrating. Well, that's just one possibility. If you listen carefully to the last show, I think Tepper could see in my eyes, oh, really? Oh, there's different ages. And I think he could read my eyes. We've talked enough. He's like, that's not southward migrating triple junction. Did you catch what he said? In other words, he gave us this date and this date. And he said, it's not necessarily a southward migrating triple junction. Instead, Tepper said, I'll do it verbally first, what if you have a spreading ridge that is offset by a transform fault? Which is, by the way, common around the world, is it not? If you look at any seafloor spreading center today, we're looking at the East Pacific Rise right now. This is today. Thank you, Marie Tharp. Here's the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. So it's not an idea that a spreading ridge is broken by a bunch of slices, a bunch of transform faults, and the ridge is offset. That's not a wild idea because there's hundreds of these on the seafloor spreading centers we have today. So Tepper said, just quickly, I don't know if you caught it in the last show, instead of a southward migrating triple junction, Tepper said, and I know Jeff likes this because he has reconstructions that he will share with us in a couple of weeks, where a spreading ridge is offset by a transformed plate boundary. This is the ocean here. This is a continent here. And just to help you see this, I'm trying to give you an alternative thought on why we have Chimacum Rock, Near Trench Magma 47, Grays River Volcanics, Near Trench Magmas 42 to 37. Instead of, in other words, this is a possibility. Mike Eddy, the guy that's part of the Dream Team, likes a southward migrating triple junction. But let's leave that alone for now. Can you see how this would also give us this apparent southward migration? It's not really that the ridge is drifting, that the ridge is moving somehow. Instead, at 47 million years ago, that's a 7. We make the near trench magmas at Chimacum Rock. Can you see it now? And now what are we going to do? What if we keep this fixed? We don't drift the red lines. Just keep those fixed, would you please? But what's going to drift, what's going to move is the continent. And if we wait a few million years, and the continent is now here, suddenly those near trench magmas jump down to here. It wasn't a gradual southward migration. It was like we had the near trench magmas here, 47, boom, now they're down here, 42 to 37. Why? Because what slipped beneath North America was the ridge and the transformed fault, if you want to think of it that way. And now the thing is down here. You can see, I think, how complicated things can get with alternatives, with geometries. It's not easy. At least it's not easy for me. So this concept of who's moving is, if you have a migration of near trench magmas, is it the ridge that's drifting through time? Or is the ridge fixed and the continent is somehow drifting over that funky offset spreading ridge? Or is there a third option? Is there a third option? There is a third option. And our guest is going to have the third option. But we're not ready to go to the guest quite yet, even though it's almost 9:30. I'm a little behind, Darrell. Hang on. Give me a few more minutes. Having fun, working up a sweat on a cold morning. So we're done for now thinking about a slab window, which is a bunch of magmas inland of a subducting ridge. You remember Jeff Tepper didn't like the label slab window because he has a concept now of a slab rolling back. Again, that's coming down the road. But the point is we do have a bunch of magmas here that are not related to subduction. They're not related to subduction. Even the near trench magmas. Magmas generated not from the subduction of an ocean plate. Instead, there's mantle that's welling up shallower than it should because there's an opening, there's a gap. That is in direct contrast to what's going on south of our slab window and north of our slab window, where we truly do have two ocean plates, we're not giving them names, with an oceanic trench offshore. We know how those magmas are made, right? Those are subduction-related magmas. And you'll notice I have 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. And the 3 of the 1, 2, 3 is a volcanic arc where we have these beautiful Mount Rainier-like stratovolcanoes erupting regularly. So where can we study this 1, 2, 3? And will it help us with today's discussion up in Alaska? It will. So if we go to California, this is what California looks like on a topographic map. It's a shaded relief map. The green is a flat central valley of California. There's a coastal mountain range of California where our guest Darrel Cowan grew up. And there's a big mountain range in eastern California known as the Sierra Nevadas. 1, 2, 3. The California Triad, it's called. And the California Triad, 1, 2, 3, which I'm about to explain on the chalkboard, is evidence of eastward subduction. So this look, 1, 2, 3, the California Triad, is the result of an ocean plate, whatever name it was, coming at California and subducting beneath it. Don't get it twisted. That's not happening today, right? Today, the Pacific Plate's moving northwest and we have the San Andreas Fault. But sometime earlier than the San Andreas Fault, we had this collision and subduction of an ocean plate making the California Triad. Let's look at that more carefully. I've done this with many of you in previous shows going way back, but let's get everybody involved. So what's the 1, 2, 3? Here's the verbiage we're going to use today. Number 1 is something called an accretionary wedge. It's in a bunch of stuff that has accreted or accumulated as this ocean floor has subducted. And inside of this very complicated, I should use green. We're going to have green for not only the accretionary wedge, but the Forearc Basin. Green today. There's a bunch of pillow basalts. There's a bunch of deep sea sediment. There's a bunch of material that's going to be converted to metamorphic rock, schists, and serpentinite. There's going to be a bunch of arcosic sandstones, fragments of things, chaotic fractures of things. It's a mess. It's a geologic mess. You want a poster that Patrick gave me? Hello, Patrick. Here's a cartoon of how complicated an accretionary wedge can be. This is our accretionary wedge today in Washington, but it's also a decent representation of the accretionary wedge of California that was created before the San Andreas Fault was born. 1, 2, 3, the California Triad. That's the Holy Trinity. So inboard or inland of the accretionary wedge is this basin that we called the Forearc last time, remember? Remember, Forearc Basin? And then the volcanic arc are truly magmas generated from subduction. So this is not near trench. This is like normal. This is like what should happen. I'm showing you this for the Pacific Northwest, but it's also a good diagram for what to visualize for the California Triad when it was active before the Eocene. And notice those magmas are being generated above a subduction zone. That's a volcanic arc. Those are subduction-related magmas. And as we learned from Jeff Tepper last time, these magmas have a totally different look, chemistry, scene than our non-subduction-related magmas. Okay? I'm also setting you up for our next 2 shows, next Wednesday and next Saturday morning, where, believe it or not, our next 2 shows after today, we're going to be going down into the mantle. And we will be discussing with at least one of our guests something called the native arc. So this volcanic arc in California, the number 3 of the California Triad, appears to be subduction-generated magmas coming up through the old craton of North America. And if we have this 1, 2, 3, and we have this native arc, we need eastward subduction. I'm hitting this hard today because it's going to pay off for our story of Alaska. But there's our California Triad, our native volcanic arc, and our very complicated Franciscan complex that our guest Darrel Cowan studied very carefully 50 years ago, man. I'm almost done because the Chugach Terrain in Alaska is one of these. And it's green on these maps. Here's a map from Alaska. And this looks familiar. The Yakutat looks familiar because that's the half of Greater Siletzia, remember? But we're talking today about the Chugach, which is this green arcosic sandstone in places converted to schist that stretches from the Aleutians all the way down to Baranof Island. It's the last thing I'm doing. Before I show you this, I want to remind you, even this discussion with our guest Darrel Cowan going up to Alaska is going to help us understand the North Cascades. You're just going to have to trust me. It's going to help us. So, this is kind of the money shot here for today's show. We have more of these amazing near-trench magmas, or in this case, near-trench plutons. Come on, boy. The green is the Chugach. It's the Forearc Basin and Accretionary Wedge of a long ago Triad. The red is part of Siletzia that's been docked since that time. But please notice 63, 61, 58, 56, 54, 47. Those are the ages of the near-trench magmas that stretch from Chugach Island all the way over to Baranof Island. And you remember that our near-trench magmas are helping us see where a triple junction was. These are near-trench, I'll put more in here. Near-trench magmas here. If the near-trench magmas are here, that means we had a spreading ridge down here. If there's triple junctions up here, that means the spreading ridge is now up here. The Chugach is a combo plotter because it has near-trench magmas coming up through a triad. The triad is telling us that the green stuff was made from a subduction story, but superimposed on top of the subduction story are these near-trench magmas, which is not a subduction story. That's why it's a combo platter. There's a combination of a subduction and a non-subduction story. My last comment/question is, how do you want to explain this age progression? What's the first thing that comes to your mind without reading Darrel's papers? I'll do it. Let's have my finger be a spreading ridge, because we know that 63 million years ago there was a spreading ridge making that near-trench magma. So the first instinct might be this. Do we have this age progression of near-trench magmas from the Eocene in Alaska because we simply move the spreading ridge through time? Between the spreading ridge subducting here, 63, then the spreading ridge moves, 61, 58, 56, 54, 47. Is it possible this is a moving spreading ridge? Or is there a more elegant, simple, beautiful explanation for these guys? It's time for our guest. It's no surprise. It's Darrel Cowan, who's been with us once before. I think he tried to join us another time with the Bob Miller Show, but the camera wasn't working or something, so this is almost like our third time with Darrel. He has been at the University of Washington for almost 50 years. Darrel Cowan has been at the University of Washington for almost 50 years, and he's still teaching. He's still teaching this quarter. So let's see if we can make this work. Let me bring you in here, Darrel, and see if we're functional. Good morning, Darrel.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you just perfectly. How about on that end?
5 by 5.
5 by 5. Well, so Darrel, you know, he's the godfather of all this stuff. Actually, would you mind, Darrel, can you just give us a quick roll call of former students that are authors on many of these papers involving Baja, BC over the last 30 years? Just who comes to your mind?
Well, if we, I'd say McGroder, Umhofer, Garver, Brandon, probably Margie Russmore, Ralph Hagerud has mentioned it, I'm sure, in papers. So we used to joke that there's something in the water in Johnson Hall. That's our building at UW that makes us favor this crazy idea. But we're not the only ones. I mean, there are Merle Beck. I mean, it must be water, and Bernie Hausen. Must be water up in Western Washington University. I don't know.
Well, it's a thrill to have you follow along with what we've been doing here, not only this series, but back a year ago with the exotic stuff. You were in the live chat a fair amount, so it's an extra thrill to have you now with us in real time. But you've been so important with all of this work for so long, including this hypothesis, that it's just a thrill to have you, first of all. It's just thank you for all of your attention and interest in what we're doing here.
Well, you're more than welcome, but I want to correct something that you just said. That I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about is simple, elegant, and beautiful. We'll let the viewers decide, and the readers can read that paper. But,
well, I think that's great. So how would you like to go right to your kind of traditional way of describing your story, or how would you like to begin here?
I think I did make a little PowerPoint because I think to talk about Leech River Schist and Baranof and doing it with my hands would be impossible. But you set up a great introduction here.
Thank you.
And at some point, we're going to come back to that little, you said, here's the money shot diagram that you showed, because there's something on there that is going to be really, and we can do that. Let's hang on a little bit. Yeah, we'll come back to that. But
good.
Because I think it's going to be a question that the viewers will have.
Okay.
And, so I'm going to let me try to share my let's do this.
Yeah, I'll let you concentrate on that. I'll just fill for a second here while you do that. So Darrel and I practiced a little bit with the technology yesterday, and remember now, I guess I need some wireless headphones, don't I?
Okay.
Keep doing this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So in case you've forgotten, this guy right here is this guy, right? So we've talked about him and his book with Marley for many months now. Okay, I do have it in the green room. Let me bring it in, Darrel.
Okay. Can we see now the the whole picture?
We can. Can you start your slideshow so it's a little bit bigger for us?
Okay. It's on my. Let me go back here for a second. Let's see.
Yeah.
So now if I do
yes
that.
Yeah. It doesn't look any different for us, so maybe we'll have to stick with this.
Yeah, I think let me go back and see. Let me do share. Let's see. Stop sharing. Yeah, I thought we had this worked out.
Did you hit the big?
Yeah, I did in my.
Nothing happened, huh?
Let's see. I did here, but.
Okay. Well, it's big enough for us to see. If you just want to roll like what we have now, I think that's going to work.
Okay, can you see my pointer?
Yes.
Maybe,
Yes.
Oh, you can on what you're seeing, or let's see.
Well, not at the moment, but I did a moment ago. There it
I'm
is.
not sure.
Yep, I see
Okay,
it now.
all right,
Yep.
good.
Good.
Okay, let's do this. Sorry, I'm not sure how to get the full thing in here, but basically, this is a figure out of that 2003 paper, and basically, I want to talk about this Leech River Schist, which is it's an orphan.
Yeah.
When you look at all the rocks around, and everybody knows there's Victoria, I'm down here in Seattle. This is Vancouver Island, Wrangellia Terrain, North Cascades over here in kind of the yellow. We all know about that. Here are some of these 50 million year old plutons on Vancouver Island, but Vancouver Island and the Northwest Cascades haven't moved out of this picture at all. I mean, basically, they're the context. And then down here, shown in the kind of orange color, is Siletzia with the orange color, and then the gray is the Olympic accretionary complex underneath Siletzia, and the gray is outer gray is the peripheral sequence. That's what Aaron talked about. So what? And here on southern Vancouver Island is Siletzia. It's called the Chosen volcanic rock. So what's unusual about this little Leech River schist? And the question that we asked, I had a graduate student, Lee Fairchild, who worked on these very interesting rocks from 1979 to 82, and we published a paper, Fairchild and Cowan, but they're very, very different from anything else. There are no other rocks like the Leech River schist anywhere in this frame. So we begin to wonder, where did they come from? And here is a picture. Let's do it. Yeah. There's a picture of the Leech River schist. Now, I put an American nickel in there. Sorry, Canadian friends. It should have been a Canadian nickel because this is a little piece of Canada. But these are turbidites. They're sandstones and mudstones that have been multiply deformed, and they have very distinctive metamorphic mineral assemblages. And what we learned back in Lee Fairchild's work is that there are intrusions in here. There are dikes and sills of paraluminous granitic rocks. And you remember what last session Jeff talked about paraluminous. These have more aluminum than you would expect in ordinary granitic rocks. And the metamorphic minerals that developed here are also very unusual. These were shallow plutons, andalusite, starolite. They're biotite, quartz biotite schists, largely multiply deformed during the intrusion of these plutons and the deformation. So we wondered where did this stuff come from? It's an orphan, and I like to use the term homeland. Where are its parents? There's nothing else in the local area that is anything like this. So we wondered, where does it come from? Let's see now if we can go to this picture. Can you see that? Okay.
We can. You bet.
Good. Yep. Okay. So there's an important moral here, I think. I like to read papers about southern Alaska, the geology of Alaska, and the North Cascades and California. And I learned about the Chugach-Prince William complex, which is shown in green here. This is a map, I think, from my paper. And even back in early plate tectonic days, I think Tor Nilsson and others at the survey had recognized this as a very thick and extensive accretionary wedge. Turbidites, sandstones, mudstones, a little bit of pillow lava and volcanic rocks in it, but one of the most extensive and thickest accretionary wedges in the world, and very few fossils back in those days, and it was known to be uppermost Cretaceous and earliest Tertiary, and that's basically about all we knew of it. And then more recently, John Garver and Cam Davidson and a lot of undergraduates in the Keck program have tried to get a better handle on the edge using 5,000 dates on detrital zircons that we've done down in Arizona. So we view this thing as a major accretionary wedge, latest Cretaceous, early Tertiary, in its present setting. Okay, you alluded to something else very important. Let's make sure this comes up. So we can see this. This shows, too bad I can't make it a little bigger, but it shows these interesting plutonic rocks, the Sinaq-Baranof belt, from Sinaq Island through Kodiak, through Kenai Peninsula and Prince William Sound, and all the way down to Baranof Island. And interestingly, I just looked this up, but a USGS geologist, Travis Hudson, published a paper in 1979 identifying this belt and this very interesting progression of ages. But maybe even more interesting, these are paraluminous granites. They have weird accessory minerals like kyanite, cordierite, garnet, and they presented the hypothesis, which now I think is the consensus, that they represent near trench plutonism that developed because of a migrating ridge and triple junction. So hypothesis one, here they are up in northern Alaska, and that ridge, as you just showed, might have moved, intersected the continent, and moved along the margin from Sinaq, Kodiak, Resurrection Peninsula, and ended up down at Baranof Island 50 million years ago. Mm-hmm. However, Leech River Schist, now we've got West Groom at Simon Fraser and USGS on Baranof Island really pinpointed the ages, pardon me, of the plutonism and the deformation and the metamorphism, and they're 49 to 50 both on Baranof Island and Leech River Schist. So I presented, let's see, make sure this comes up, this hypothesis. This is a figure John Garver made. So now, instead of what I just showed you, I proposed that at 50 million years ago, Baranof Island was sitting right off basically the Straits of Juan de Fuca, which of course...
Darrel, that is elegant and beautiful. That's what I want to say right now. That's the elegant and beautiful part. Come on now.
Yeah, and it is kind of simple, but we don't know if it's right. I mean, simplicity doesn't mean it's right, but it's an interesting idea. So now here, notice where Kodiak is, and here's Kenai Peninsula, and Baranof Island is sitting down here. And so my idea was that this Chugach Terrain has been translated about 1,200 kilometers northward after 50 million years, because at 50, we basically, and I'm going to show another figure here in a minute, we kind of injected a piece of metamorphosed and intruded Chugach right along the southern edge of Wrangellia. So that was my idea. And you might ask why. I have to say, I'd been to Baranof Island, but only Sitka. I'd never actually saw the rocks. The metamorphic Chugach terrain is on the very southern tip of Baranof Island. It's called the Baranof Schists, and has 50 million year old, 49 million year crawfish bay pluton in it. But I'd never been there, and I'd never seen it. And somebody might say, well, how can you make a hypothesis like this when you've never actually seen the rocks? And I think I told you yesterday, I wrote a paper with a colleague, Bernard Evans, about a ultramafic body in Spain, which we never visited. And one of the reviewers said, well, they've never been there. How can they write about this? And another reviewer said, well, yeah, we write papers about Mars, but we've never actually set foot on Mars. So I think the moral is read, and you can make some interesting connections. Since then, I have been to Baranof Island, so yeah. I think I'm a little more confident here. Okay, so can we go now to this little diagram, see if that shows up. This is from the 82 paper where I first hypothesized it. Let's look at D first.
Okay.
So what do we see here? There is Wrangellia in this kind of crosshatch pattern. Mm-hmm. That little sliver in there is the Leech River Schist, and notice it's bounded by two faults, the San Juan Fault to the north and the Leech River Fault to the south. And then south of the Leech River Fault is Siletzia. So this is what it looks like today. And how did it get that way if we go up to A? Now this is the stuff out here in the ocean. That's Baranof Island with its little plutons and metamorphic rocks. There's Wrangellia. All this dippled stuff is the rest of the Chugach Terrain. Then we take a piece of that and just jam it against southern Vancouver Island on the San Juan Fault, which is left lateral. I mean, to get that thing moving out of the Pacific onto the mainland, there's Victoria. That's a left lateral fault. We move down here, we take that off to Alaska after 49 million years ago, and then we inject Siletzia here. Here's the accretion of Siletzia, there's Victoria, and we end up with the situation basically today. So that's the idea. What's the alternative? Like you said, when we go back to let's say this one, where we have a spreading ridge moving southward. In my idea, the spreading ridge was basically at the Straits of Juan de Fuca 50 million years ago. So it didn't migrate from Sanak Island down to Baranof, to Leech River, but it basically at 50 was sitting kind of what you talked about and what Jeff talked about down at these southerly latitudes. There's another hypothesis which you're going to, I think, talk about in future sessions about the resurrection plate. And I have to say that here's another case where these two hypotheses, Darrel's, where this thing was farther to the south and it's been displaced, and the resurrection plate with a migrating ridge are I don't think they can both be the same. I think they are different, and so this is kind of the challenge. What are we doing to further investigate this?
Well, that was great. Thank you. I want to ask a few questions directly to you, and then sure, we'll go to the live. I'm sure that the viewers have all sorts of things they want to ask, but I'm going to hog the time for the first couple minutes here, if you're okay. So if you're kind of iffy about this resurrection plate, which is our next session, by the way, so Wednesday will be the resurrection plate. Which plate do you see as the important plate offshore to translate the Chugach?
I don't think I want to comment on that.
All right.
This is another debate that's been hanging around for 40 years. The Kula, where was the Kula? Where was the Kula plate, the Farallon plate? And I think maybe one general idea is to move these things northward. The Kula would be a great plate because it disappeared eventually, and now we have Farallon against North America. But I don't know. I haven't thought about that, and I don't think I want to. I don't think I want to speculate.
Well, I'm from the Washington Post, so let me rephrase. Nick Zentner, Washington Post. Regardless of the name of the plate, you need that plate to be moving north to have this translation, right?
Definitely, yeah.
And just to clarify, you see one relatively stationary spreading ridge during this time window that we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the spreading ridge does not drift, but this slice of westernmost North America is shifting north.
Well, remember, you've got to get Yakutat plate up there. I mean, the sense of movement of Chugach, in my hypothesis, and moving Yakutat are fully consistent. You move one up there, and then here comes Yakutat.
Yeah. How about the timing of that? This might be another one that you're not interested in, but is it possible that both the Chugach and Yakutat went up together?
I think, now I have to think about this a little carefully. I think what I've read from people like John Garver and others, and then the Mike's group, that Yakutat came up after because you've got to accrete Siletzia, and Chugach was already moving up after you shoved in this little piece of Leech River Schist. So I don't think they came up together.
Okay.
And this is what Erin and her group are going to do. They're going to look at the Yakutat sediments and see if they can pinpoint where the sources were on North America.
Yeah.
Why don't you ask me, where's this big fault? You're going to move Chugach Terrain 1,200 kilometers, and we have another Baja, BC mysterious fault? We can't find this thing. So could you show your little one-shot figure there? You drew it. You drew that fault. You got a whopping fault there. Separating Chugach Terrain, even down on Baranof Island from Alaska, goes right south of Anchorage. That's called the Border Ranges Fault, and it's well known. And now we should say Border Ranges Fault System. It's not just one fault, but it's a system. And I proposed that was, if you want to go out and see a fault, not a cryptic fault or the mysterious fault, I proposed it was the Border Ranges fault that accommodated this big contrast across the fault there. So thank you. You answered my question.
I didn't want you to start throwing pots and pans all over the kitchen, Darrel. I know that's a sensitive question sometimes, as we'll discuss next winter. I mean, Darrel's going to be a big part of what we do next winter. We're going to do this Baja, BC discussion, and you're looking at the guy who's been in the middle of all this for a long time, and that's
Can I bring up one other? There's a.
God, you're doing it all. You're asking yourself questions and then answering them. You're a one-man band.
5-ton elephant in this room.
Yeah.
And that is paleomagnetism.
Good.
There are paleomagnetic data from the Chugach Terrain in southern Alaska, and it's published. I didn't do this. This is Santa Cruz again. This is Rob Coe and Peter Plumley and Steve Bull. That indicate that when this resurrection ophiolite was intruded about 55 million years ago, it was a couple of thousand kilometers farther south, and it's in the Chugach Terrain. Now, I'm not going to go any farther, but I sat down with the Resurrection Plate guys, Peter Heusler and Dwight Bradley. This is at the Seattle GSA meeting, and they published their Resurrection Plate, and I published my hypothesis. And so we sat and had a beer or coffee, and very friendly, and they said, well, what about this? And I said, my hypothesis, I think I can explain it. What about that? I think I can explain that. But what you can't accommodate is the paleomagnetic data, because if we accept those, if they're correct, then it means your little big spreading ridge wasn't moving from Sanak to Baranof in its present setting. So again, we've got a great controversy here, and we'll see if we can make some progress.
Well, we'll make progress with our live viewers asking questions right now, and then you will continue. Actually, I'm going to ask one more. So, sure. Actually, I was struck by Basil Tikoff's comment that you can't really have a controversy if the other side is just ignoring what you're doing. It's like, it's this kind of long-arching kind of narrative change doesn't really happen until enough people see there's some problems with the conventional story. With that said, do you remember publishing this in the early 80s, and was there a reaction, and was that reaction any different 20 years ago?
I think I don't remember much reaction, but I mean, this was before the whole Baja BC thing. Remember that didn't really start until Merle and Linda Nosen published their paper. Ted Irving coined the term in 1985. So this is pre Baja BC, and so I don't think it got much traction. But and part of the reason is that we had so few dates. These isotopic dates are so important. We had Dick Armstrong at UBC did some rubidium strontium on Leech River, and the survey did some K argon dates, on Baranof Island, which are kind of whack because they only give you lose argon, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think it did get much traction. But after Baja BC, and other people got these isotopic dates, I thought I need to publish this again. I can make a better case for it. So I think you're right. I think if we pay attention to the resurrection plate and what Jeff Tepper has done and Mike Eddy and others, all that stuff about what's going on in the North Cascades relates to this offshore. Yeah. It's connecting offshore geology with onshore. That's still the greatest thing about I think what plate tectonics has given us.
It is, and the goal will be to take this onshore geology and somehow have it connect to our next two shows where folks are down in the mantle finding these slabs. And it feels like we are making progress in general, but we're not quite there yet with seems like a pretty coherent picture offshore. Maybe we'll be there eventually. We need to get to these viewers. Hey viewers, I'm going to start reading some questions. Do you see some things, Darrel?
I don't. It's hard. I have it on another screen here, and I haven't been watching live chat at all.
That's totally fine.
Why don't you pick and choose, and I'd be happy, kind of blindfolded here to try to answer.
No, that's fine. Hopefully, will just be easier for you just to concentrate on which questions I pick. So, viewers, now is the time. I'm live with you, and I'll look for some uppercase. And you have questions for Darrel about Alaskan geology, about this Leech River situation, more about the near trench plutons, anything that you like. Mike's commenting that he likes the idea that it's a series of faults instead of one single fault. Phil asks, how wide is this spreading ridge?
Well, we just have to draw an analogy with spreading ridges that we see today, and go out to the Juan de Fuca, and I think the actual crest where you're making pillow lavas, gabbros and pillow lavas, is a graben. It's a normal fault system that's spreading. That's what happens when you have normal faults. You extend, but they're not very wide. They're a few kilometers wide. And so this thing was probably, but that's all you need if you're going to get hot magma up underneath.
Okay, thank you. Saber is, I think, trying to get his mind around this concept. He asks, could the near trench magmas be moved north after they were formed to explain the time of them? That's pretty much what you're saying with this hypothesis, right?
Yeah, I think that the importance of the Leech River is that it kind of fixes where this thing was 50 million years ago. But I don't know if anybody's asked, well, the Chugach is a big accretionary wedge. You talked about the California Triad. Where's the Forearc? Where's the arc? Well, the arc was Wrangellia. I think the Chugach was the accretionary wedge that was forming at subduction of a plate beneath Wrangellia. Wrangellia and the North Cascades, the Coast Mountains, if we include North Cascades, has a big magmatic arc on it. And I think that the Chugach, you got this accretionary wedge. Where's the arc? Where's Waldo? Well, I mean, it could likely have been Wrangellia. So remember what happened with Wrangellia? I mean, it was farther south, and so the whole Chugach itself, which has older parts in it, might have been even farther south than what I showed at 50 million years ago. I know it's in my paper. I can't do it with my hands. It's too hard.
No, let me follow up on that. I'm confused, I guess, just a touch. Are you saying the Coast Range plutonic complex of British Columbia and Wrangellia are the same thing?
Well, if you look at let's say insular superterrain now.
Yeah.
Okay, which includes Wrangellia, Alexander Terrain, the Peninsular Terrain. So it's big. And remember, if insular superterrain was accreted at 100,
right?
And then we've got in the North Cascades has an arc. We talked about the magmatic flare-ups you did last time. You know, this big 9385.
Yeah.
Subduction-related magmas. There was a trench offshore. You were subducting something under that magmatic arc, and you could hypothesize there was an accretionary prism. The Nanaimo is a good candidate for a forearc basin. You got an arc, the coast mountains, North Cascades. You got a forearc basin. Where's the accretionary wedge? Well, now it's up in Alaska. It's called Chugach.
That part I can follow, but the part where you're kind of thinking about Wrangellia, the insular basically being Mount Stewart and those things, I guess I haven't put those together.
Well, you remember we talked about pizza boxes and the thrust faults and the pizza boxes in the North Cascades, North Cascade thrust system, the San Juan Islands. You restore the Straight Creek Fault.
Yeah.
And when you look at everything together, you've got Mount Stewart and the Spuzum Pluton 93 million years ago. And you move west and you're in the Northwest Cascade system. I mean, this is another issue. I asked Bob Miller about this. You know, how are you going to, we had a live chat, how are you going to relate these two? But I think at some point we would agree that, I think we would, that yeah, the North Cascades that we see in the coast mountains were part of this insular superterrain that had accreted and had accreted.
That's new for me. It shouldn't be, I guess, but it is. Taking the big narrative of the insular and the intermontane and bringing them through the North Cascades. It was such a struggle to do that last winter, and I guess I kind of gave up with that, and I'm starting to kind of now see it, like right now.
Yeah, I think we should go back and look at, you know, some of your diagrams that you did last autumn, but you think if the North Cascades, yeah.
I got Mappy McMap with me.
Yeah, if you think that when we look at this, that insular superterrain and I see Wrangellia in orange and the coast mountains and everything, and our little Northwest Cascades thing, we're not related by 90 million years or 93 million years, then where's the big? There's got to be another big fault or something in there that completely separates these. And I don't think. I think the key thing are your diagrams where you put undid the slip on the Straight Creek Fault, and you said, well, wait a minute, we've got. Now things like Spuzum and Mount Stewart, they intrude the Chugach Schist and the old settler unit and everything, and then we just go west.
Wow! And
we're in the North Cascades system. So
this is a big moment for me, and it's a little appetizer for next winter, I guess.
Yeah, let's turn back to this in a few minutes.
That was a fun detour. Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry, viewers. Let me go back. I'm scrolling way back now. Marbles Collector says, what causes a change from subduction to a transform fault system?
Well, a good example is California. How did you make the San Andreas Fault, which is a transform fault? And this is Tanya Atwater. I think you've done this, or I don't know. So until 30 million years ago, there was a trench off California, offshore, subducting Pacific Ocean plate, Farallon plate a little bit. And just like you showed and what Jeff said, it had this ridge system had transform faults in it. So we had a 3-plate system, North America, Farallon, and Pacific, with all these transforms and ridges. So what happened is that a ridge was consumed, and all of a sudden you had North America up against Pacific plate. Farallon disappeared. And the motion of Pacific with respect to North America was to the northwest, not eastward, to the northwest. So you made a right lateral transform fault. Mm-hmm. So this is, I think Tanya brilliantly, just after plate tectonics had been invented, or geologists knew about it. The way you change from a trench or a subduction system into a transform fault is you consume a spreading ridge system and bring another plate with the appropriate movement up against the former trench.
Good, thank you.
That's hard to say. It's hard to do without diagrams.
It is. No, it's.
Go to Tanya. Go to Tanya Atwater's website at UC Santa Barbara, and she's got beautiful animations that show exactly what happens.
I'm looking for my California Triad thing. I guess I'll. Can't find that. We'll just do it verbally, speaking and not having diagrams. So a week from this morning, we're going to be talking about eastward subduction versus westward subduction. And you are one of the experts on the California Triad and the evidence for eastward subduction in the Franciscan complex. Just off the top of your head, Darrel, what are your dates that you would like for when we need eastward subduction beneath California? Between which and which do we need eastward subduction?
I would say, without too much latitude and ages, I would say from 145 to 80.
Okay.
And those ages come from isotopic dates in the Sierra Nevada, thousands of zircon ages, K argon, whatever you want. We say the main plutonic events started about 125. There were flare-ups and everything, 145. And the youngest magmatic zircon I know about is about 80. And then the Sierras shut off. So you go to the Franciscan and you look at the metamorphic dates and the fossils, you get 145, 120, 100, 80. Look at the Great Valley group. It's sitting on the Coast Range ophiolite, which is maybe 160 or 165, but the oldest sediments in this Forearc Basin are Upper Jurassic, 145, 150. But it continues to, because after the Sierra shut off, it stayed there as like a Forearc Basin and was flooded even into the Tertiary. But I would say pretty good 145 to 80, maybe 150 to 80.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, back to some questions. I keep hogging the time. I can't help it.
No, that's okay. This is fun. I'd love to do this. Don't have a chance much.
Chris, who I think you visited with over the break down in California, what can be said regarding the protolith source for those meta-sediments?
That's a great question, and my former PhD student, John Garver, and Cam Davidson and his students have done a lot of zircon dating, and they said the bulk of the grains come from the Coast Mountains in British Columbia. Magmatic grains, a lot of 170s, but they also get younger because there are younger plutons in the Coast Mountains. In fact, in North Cascades, they get as young as 60. But the bulk of these plutons, they're Jurassic magmatic rocks in the Coast Mountains, and I think they've written a paper about this, and you can find it, or I could find a thing. But they've looked at provenance. We say, what is the source? So
you're talking about the sand before it became the Leech River and the Baranof Schist?
That's
when
right.
When they were together down in our neighborhood.
Yeah, these are, I mean, when this accretionary wedge was forming, it's real thick and they're turbidites. They're, sandstone, mudstone turbidites with a little bit of volcanic stuff and maybe a little chert.
Yep. Mr. Tony, what's the speed that these land masses move to the north? Is it fast or slow by geologic standards?
It's, I'm not a very good mathematician. You say 1,200 kilometers and 50 million years. You can figure it out. Yeah, it's not as extreme. Baja, BC got a lot of criticism because it's fast. It's like 20 centimeters per year or something, which is really fast. And I don't think this is unreasonable.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Glenn C., and I noticed a couple questions on the last show that I didn't see. To add to your complexity, what is the impact of the 40+ million years of clockwise rotation in the Pacific Northwest to the location of the spreading ridge near trench magma eruptions in Washington and where the plutons are? Is this all post your story, this clockwise rotation?
Yes. Yeah. Remember, my story stopped at 50 basically, and when Siletzia was accreted, and you've got pretty good dates on that from Mike, now Newlands and Ray Wells. I mean, we're thinking 46, 48, something like that. I forget. So my story was over when Siletzia jammed in against the southern edge, against the continent there. Yeah, and all the rotations and everything are post Leech River.
And that's what I've been teaching for a long time. But of course, we had Basil on before the holidays, and he's got rotation going back way earlier than that, which blows my mind. So I choose to ignore it. Just kidding. But it was interesting that there's these different episodes of rotation. How about a few more, Darrel? You got time for 3 more?
Sure.
Okay. Mike says, what is the technical basis for a system of faults? Is it age, chemical, magnetism, or logic?
I think I would answer it's what you see. It's what you see on the ground. Now, what would be a good example? We talk about the San Andreas Fault, and there are places in California where you could straddle it. I mean, it's like knife sharp. It's like a white line on a road. But there are other places where the fault zone might be a kilometer wide, and there may be subparallel faults that share the same geometry and sense of slip. So I think it's what you observe, and then you say, well, they have to have some similarities in age, slip history, and geometry. And when you go up into Southeast Alaska and you look at the Border Ranges fault, I mean, we call them splays, which are mappable faults, again, subparallel, and in some cases it's just really hard to document, are the ages of slip exactly the same? So it's what you observe, and then you start looking at the characteristics.
Good answer. These are all good. You're an experienced teacher. I should clarify, you're still not teaching every quarter, but you do occasionally teach?
UW has a great program where when you become emeritus, you can, and so does California State University system, but you can choose to come back and teach up to 5 years at 40% time, which is 1 quarter. So I'm teaching my favorite course called Structure and Tectonics, which I've done for, I think, about 15 years. And I think the main reason is that we take a field trip to Death Valley in early March. And, our students have, as you know, have really suffered because we haven't been able to take people out in the field much or hardly at all. And so this is going to be a real opportunity. So I teach that just winter quarter. And
you don't have to do that. You must really get something out of it.
It keeps me watching stuff like this and reading, and I think to teach you have to keep up on the literature and be aware of what's going on in the earth science community. You know that. I mean, if you don't, you're not going to be a very good teacher.
One more. This is from William. Why is there a bend in the faults in the Anchorage area from the north-south to the east-west?
That's another topic that you can do a little literature research on, called the Alaska orocline. Alaska orocline. And it's very likely, in fact, if you look at my paper, which is on Nick's website, the 2003 paper, I undid the Alaska orocline. So basically, you take the western part of that little diagram you showed and just rotate it clockwise. And how do we know this? Paleomagnetic data that other groups have looked at. So it's thought that yeah. So there. Oh, good. You can see that. Thanks. In the light color is where I undid the Alaska orocline. Now you see Sinak, Kodiak, Resurrection, and Baranof are one of your long string beams that are situated along the coast. So basically, you've taken the Kodiak Sinak part, rotated it clockwise to restore it to its original position. Thanks. Yeah, I think that's another topic that I think probably needs some further the orocline idea and how do you bend Alaska, but looks like it happened.
Yeah. Well, that's 2 winters from now. I don't know, but we got our hands full at the moment, and you were great as always. I mean, every time I chat with you by email or text or phone or now this, I can't thank you enough, and I hope we have you on again real soon, Darrel.
Well, you're welcome, and I apologize to all the live chatters there. It's just hard for me to watch that, and I'll go back and look though. Yeah, I'm gonna review. So it was great to be here. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Darrel. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Oh.
Darrel Cowan, University of Washington. He started there in 1974. Amazing guy. Okay, let's try to regroup, see if we're still functional, and we'll finish with a couple more questions from you. I'm going to scroll down to live and see if we're still together. I think we still have 860 watching. There we are, Ivana, Geneva, Zazu, Mr. Tony. I see everybody now. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was way back in the live chat, so I'm sorry if we didn't get to your question. Let me scroll back and just look for a few more uppercase and see if I can just hit anything that maybe you were curious about. They're questions for Darrel, I guess, but I can try. Richard wants to know about the Paleomag data consistent across the 2 locales of the Leech River Schist. I don't know, Richard. When I try not, so here's a little peek into how I operate here. I always, on the day before, test the technology with the guests, make sure that they feel comfortable, they know how to share a screen, they feel like their headphones are working and all that. Even the lighting sometimes, somebody's way too dark. And almost always, the guest says, okay, well, let's talk about what we're going to do. Let's get a game plan together. And every time I say, well, I want you to be comfortable, but I don't want to rehearse what we're going to do. You're just going to have to trust me. And sometimes the guest is like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But I don't want to talk about all this stuff ahead of time. I think it would just kill the spontaneity of what we're doing. That's just my general plan anyway, And so I mentioned that because Darrel and I were chatting a little bit yesterday, and he's like, do you think we should talk about paleomag and this and that? And I'm like, oh, we'll see what the folks want to ask about. Now, I didn't see your question, Richard, but I kind of just mentioned, we're going to save a bunch of this, including the paleomagnetic stuff, until next winter. And it seems like I'm just kind of avoiding a hard topic, and maybe I am. But we will devote, what will it be? I don't know, 4 letters, 6 letters in the alphabet next year, next winter, on our Baja BC A to Z series. I want to learn more about this paleomag stuff because everybody's got questions. Everybody's got questions, including me. And I'm just as guilty as anybody else. I barely know anything about paleomagnetism. So I think that Darrel would give you maybe a little bit of an answer if I had seen your question, but otherwise we're going to put a lot of that off until next year. It's nice to know the paleomag's been done and it's been helpful, but it's obviously a major part of this whole thing. Okay, now I'm closer to live again. Joe, how does the Hawaiian seamount bend play into this movement? You know how I used to joke that Craters of the Moon comes up in almost every show? Or before these live streams, almost every public lecture, people, the question and answer afterwards, somebody would ask about Craters of the Moon. This Hawaiian seamount chain thing, it just grabs people as well. Joe, I don't know. You maybe saw our Ray Wells show, and he had some new information about that seamount chain and the timing of it, but I don't know the answer. And Kent says, is the Chugach Formation near Valdez, Alaska, part of this story? I think so, yes. Well, should we go to the, no. The Chugach Mountains, I don't know Alaska geography, but the answer is probably yes. We're talking about that stuff being much further south. What did Darrel say, 1,200 kilometers? I thought it was 200 kilometers. Am I getting that mixed up? I need to reread that paper. Blue Sky asking about magnetic pole drift. Yeah, so that's one of the many reasons that having live chat and live questions is a major help. I can see how often people ask the same kinds of things, and I know that will be an interesting program down the road. I mean, much of what I've done here, or really for the last 20 years, is simply just based on how often people ask the same questions over and over and over again. There's just a natural interest. So I'm not, guessing what people are interested in. I know what they're interested in based on this. So paleomag always comes up. And are they sure the paleomag is correct? Because there's something called magnetic reversals. Has anybody thought about that? Has anybody thought about polar wander? Has anybody thought about? So yeah, we'll get deep into it next winter. Oh, Darrel's now in the live chat. Okay, so it's 10:30. A toast to you. Thanks to you. Are you proud of yourself? You should be. You hung in here for whatever it was, an hour and a half, hour and 43 minutes. You stayed to the bitter end. Here's to you for your attention to detail, your interest in learning new things as it's part of this live stream series. Here's to you. Here's to your health. Here's to the health of everyone in your community, and you can define community however you wish. Here's to Darrel Cowan, who is a great help not only today, but pretty much over the last couple of years with some of the stuff I've been doing. Here's to you, Darrel. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I love being part of this community, and I love have something to do during all these winter days. And I am just remembering to what winter was like before the pandemic. and how we just kind of not have a whole lot of interesting stuff to work on. So this Chris Mattinson upstairs is the guy who said, why don't you do one of these A to Z things every winter? That'll give you something to do. Because he probably got tired of me complaining about me being rudderless until the weather got nice. So I still have plenty of plans to do pop-up geology things this spring and this summer and North Cascades and everything else. I mean, that's all great, but this has been a perfect addition to my yearly calendar. And I hope it's a nice addition to your twice-a-week routine during these winter months. For us in the Northern Hemisphere, it's tough sledding. Ha ha. It's tough sledding, man. Man. So, we continue. When am I going to see you next? I'm going to see you Wednesday, whatever it is. I'll see you Wednesday, January 12th at 2 p.m. Pacific time, right? This coming Wednesday, January 12th, 2 p.m. Pacific. And then the next show after that will be, that's right, Sunday, January 15th at 9 a.m. And both of those shows will be looking at the mantle of planet Earth and looking for ocean plates that are still with us. They're just way, way, way down there. Thank you. I love you. And goodbye from Ellensburg, Washington, USA.